hacker communities and oppressive regimes. Without any further ado, I'd like to give the floor to the first speaker, first governor, Victor. Hey,
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, we in the First Prop believe that the times of intervention for democracy are over. The times of taking military power and killing someone for the name of democracy are over, because there is this wonderful thing that the world has created, which we call the World Wide Web, which is now what we're going to use to spread our values. What we say in this debate is a hacker is not someone that bypasses the CIA firewall, ladies and gentlemen. That is called a cracker. What a hacker is, to us, is someone who is good with computers and who can bypass censorship. So we say that this debate is mostly about countries such as China, countries such as Pakistan, that actively restrict areas and actively restrict information that their people have access to through the internet, ladies and gentlemen. We say that when we're talking about oppressive regimes, then we think that this is not an important part of this debate of what constitutes an oppressive regime. What we on the prop side are going to defend is that once we decide that the regime is oppressive, once we decide that something needs to be taken, some measures need to be taken, then those measures are not intervention, those measures are not other kind of things that we have doing so far, such as, for example, sanctions, but those measures are that the Western liberal democracies should finance and support with know-how the communities of local hackers, of the communities of local people that actively work to bypass the censorship that is enforced on them in those countries. So this is the setting for our debate. I would say the most best example in the world right now is China, because China is working hard to try to restrict its communities and try to restrict companies that provide VPN lines for its people, for the people in China to bypass the censorship. And we say that China is winning the battle as of now, and we say that what could change the outcome is if the West know-how and the West money was backing those people that are providing those VPN lines and that are using those VPN lines. No, thank you. Now, what I'm going to look in my speech, what we see are the burdens of proposition, is first of all to say that sovereignty and the right to decide what your people, what kind of information have, sovereignty is something instrumental, and the country does not have that right, ladies and gentlemen. Secondly, that in order to have a working democracy, you need information. And then thirdly, we're going to talk about how our plan is going to bring about a democracy and how it is going to further the wants of the people in those countries. So first of all, let's talk about sovereignty. We say that yes, sovereignty is a nice thing as far as it goes in international relations. But we say there are different limits and different qualifications that a state needs to meet in order to be a sovereign state and to be respected, for its sovereignty to be respected. We say one of those is allowing its people to choose themselves what kind of rules govern that state, which we call democracy. We say that democracy, or the right to vote, is the base for everything. We say that first of all, it's the gateway to all other rights. Because even the right to life can become an obligation rather than a life if the community is not able to actively lobby for example, legalizing euthanasia, ladies and gentlemen, where rights such as voting to change laws are restricted, then we say that all rights are genuinely restricted because you need to be able to change your status, gentlemen. So we say that it is a fundamental thing for those communities, for those people to be happy to have this right. We say this, secondly, even if a democracy, let's say for once we have a free election, which has happened in many countries, and then somebody who wins, decides that no, from now on we're an autocracy. We say that that is also something not legitimate, because just as you cannot sell yourself in slavery, we say that even worse, you cannot sell your whole family in slavery for generations. So we say that it's not ever a justifiable decision to repeal democracy and therefore deprive future generations of the ability to have this gateway right to all other rights, ladies and gentlemen. So that was what we see is the sovereignty is instrumental, and it is democracy that is actually what we need to make people happy to have anything else. No, thank you. Now, secondly, gentlemen, why do we need this information then? We say that you cannot make choices, you cannot choose what you want your life to be and what you want the rules around you to be if you do not have enough information. We say that we concede to the idea that, of course, not all people are gonna go and read the Declaration of Human Rights if they get rid of censorship in China. But we say what that allows, if we actively establish that there is a possibility to at least reach it if you want. No, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Is that first of all you will be able to form opinions, and there will be people that will be leading those opinions in communities. And secondly, if you really want to, there will be an opportunity to check You will no longer be under the oppression or under the truth monopoly of, for example, mullahs in Pakistan, who have the monopoly of what Quran says. Now people will be able to go online and actually access the factual Quran as it was written centuries ago, ladies and gentlemen. We say another good example is Belarus, because when people in Belarus are asked, well, what is the most pressing problem? So what is the pressing, what do you think is wrong with the country? They say, well, nothing wrong. We don't yet have a TV, but every other village in Belarus has. We know, we've heard about it on the radio. We say that that is another we see is that since those people, no thank you, don't have access to information, they have a distorted view of what their status the country is, and therefore they are more likely to give their own rights away, because dictators dictators give them information that suggests that there's a pressing problem in the country and we need to declare martial law right now. But since those people themselves are not able to check that, and mullahs in Pakistan support that, then those people make wrong decisions and deprive themselves and their future generations of rights that they should not do, and they would not do if they had the information.
Okay, so why do you think that those individuals who think that there is nothing wrong with their country will actually read those opposition sides?
What we say is that even if those individuals themselves do not read it, there will be someone amongst them who will be forming the opinion. And we say that if someone forms an opinion and it is maybe too radical, or even if it's not too radical, you have the opportunity to check that opinion, which makes in turn that you can check it later, but in turn means that that person will be less likely to lie to you because you know you can check it. Now finally, gentlemen, how will this bring about democracy? We say that first of all, the general idea that you have more information means you will make, no thank you, you're out of time, you will make more decisions and you will be able to understand what are human rights, which is a very good example is again China and North Korea, where people are brainwashed on a daily basis. Secondly, we say that it provides an arena for people to find out that there are other people who also think the same. This is what worked in Tunisia and worked in Egypt, is that people were only united through internet, because before that they felt that I'm the only rebel, or my village is the only rebel and everyone else is supporting our regime. But then on the internet they found out that there are millions of people in the country that support the same views. So we say that that provides an arena for them to understand and to form an actual movement, and also to make it into a political movement, because we say that in order for an opposition to establish themselves ever, they need to have a comprehensive and a comprehensive plan, a comprehensive set of ideas, of visions that they have to discuss with each other, which the regimes often do not let them to do anywhere else, and therefore we need to provide a safe place for them on the internet. So all in all, the first government here says that sovereignty is instrumental, democracy is important, right to information is the basis of democracy and everything else, and our plan is going to bring about democratization and more freedom to people. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor, for your speech. And now to open the case of opposition, I would like to give the floor to the representative from SSC Riga A, Rainbows. Hey, hey. Here, here.
So, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, what the first government, when they come up and they define hacker as a very peaceful person that's actually just wants to spread a bit of information within the society. Actually, we say that that's a very narrow view and wrong view of what hacking is all about, right? It's not only about spreading information. In many cases, it is about, let's say, hacking or even getting out of order, let's say, IT systems that are controlling, for example, water systems, right? We say that there are much more things that hackers can do. And I will speak further on why unaccountable hacker communities are very bad way how to change a regime. So, then they say about sovereignty, right? That it's all about instrumental, and if you don't give these rights, some certain rights to information, then you don't have sovereignty, right? Well, we say that basically it is not about that. The sovereignty is about preserving peace within a territory, and if they are starting to bring up examples, let's say from China, we say that actually we don't see China as a better place. We see China a better place if it has some centralized government that's actually trying to control, trying to develop the country. The income is growing, there's continuously more and more rights, and although we say we can tolerate that there is not this free information flow, because the risks of China, let's say, when it's rapidly developing, and there's these cultural tensions between different groups, or secondly, tensions between income groups, that there are poorer and richer people, we say that's a terrible situation when you want to actually intervene and mess up the very hard to control system that has been established. We don't see their definition of sovereignty as actually valid. And finally, they talk about need for information, how democracy develops. We say, actually, it's not about giving only good information to these countries. We say that there's a lot of information that is actually manipulated by these hacker communities, because we have to remember that these hacker communities are never neutral bystanders. They have their own agenda, and they're not accountable for it. And they usually don't spread only news that is like neutral and what you say is intelligent. They usually manipulate these news, and these people are usually the most radicalized parts of society, and they have the most radical views. So we don't see their case as standing. Okay, 2 points that I will talk about. Now sit down. First of all, can we trust the hacker community? And I spoke also about that in my rebuttal, so count it in. There will be, secondly, I will speak about that there will be response from the regime. And finally, you speak why you're not justified to support these communities. Okay, first of all, how can we trust these hacker communities? Right, as I mentioned, that by definition, hacker communities are these bodies that don't have responsibility, that these are these very often virtual communities that have these radical views that are against the existing regime. So you shouldn't mistake them with some friendly organizations that are coming together on Sundays, right? So, what their aim is to gain very often control of certain territories, or not only gain control, maybe they are trying to create an uprising within that region, right? To create some movement against the existing order. We say that we never know what are actually these movements that are trying to create. Because when you look at the Western history and their, let's say, support for communist regimes, from Western intellectual point of view, they were people that were fighting for the rights of the oppressed classes. But in reality, when these, let's say, communist groups gained control in these territories, the consequences were usually actually much worse than the existing oppressive regime. So you have to understand that these hacker communities very often have quite extreme views, right? And those are the most radical elements of society. No, thank you. Secondly, that they are taking these. No, sit down. That they are taking these views that trying to when they are trying to upset the let's say the existing regime. They may since they don't have accountability, they may decide on their own let's say view how to do it. And we know that actually hacking and the computer systems is a very powerful tool, which you look, for example, in Iran, there was a virus in this power plant, right, that actually blocked its progress. We say that the powers of such hacking and, let's say, spreading virus is so dangerous. Now, let's say, if you can hack and you can influence the IT system of a nuclear power plant, then you are really risking with grave consequences. We don't see that these communities actually deserve our support. And final point under this point is that they actually are competing communities, so they are very often competing for the support, so they are ready to go to the most extreme forms to get the support. Second point, there will be response from the regime, right? There will be it's not that hard to understand who is actually supporting. There are not that many actors involved in international relations. And when Russia was intervening, let's say in Estonia, when it was like messing up its IT systems, it was quite clear that those hackers were from Russia. When we say that when these countries find out that you are actually helping these hacker communities, first of all, it is much harder for you to communicate with these regimes. And we say that at the moment it's extremely important for West to keep a very good relationship with countries such as China or North Korea. We say that we have to keep these communication channels open. And the moment that they find out that you are actually against, actively supporting people that are against them and trying to upset the regime in these territories and create disturbances, we say that you will definitely get this retaliation from the regime. And we say that there's also consequences to population, because sometimes you can find out that the hacking attack is coming from a certain region. However, you instead of punishing only this hacker community, they sometimes punish the broader community, which the hackers are not accountable to. Right? So that's the second point, that there are consequences in response from the regime. Final point, which Vladimir will talk more about, is that we're not justified to support them, because we're not ready to actually take up those consequences that we might create, right? We're ready to, we think that it is some romantic way you're supporting some small group that is fighting against the regime. However, actually you're messing up with these these countries that have already these political instabilities and the consequences that can follow, let's say, from nuclear power plants, from breaking up these water systems, or simply uprisings, those are not actually consequences that the Western states are ready to take when they are doing this. If they would be ready to take them, they would support it in an explicit way. What they're doing is basically they are they are wanting to support and change this regime. They are funding and supporting unaccountable groups with unaccountable consequences, which we see is actually a very bad way how to change these countries. And we see that there are already ways that you can communicate, and there's progress made in these countries. So we don't really see that the plan of the government stands. So we're proud to stand in opposition.
Thank you, Rachel, for your speech. Before I ask the next speaker, I would kindly ask listeners and other debaters to pay respect toward the speaker and be more quiet, as the room is quite small and it's hard to hear the speaker. Nevertheless, now I'd like to give the floor to the second speaker of the first government to lead the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to further elaborate on how our plan leads to self-determination, and secondly, to an extension to our case about why the West should do it, why we should care about the self-determination. But first, some rebuttal. Okay, what Reynolds came up and said here was that we have a narrow view on this debate. We see that it is a very legitimate way for us to set up this debate. Firstly, because hacker is defined as somebody who is not going into somebody else's systems and destroying them, but hackers, we define them as somebody who go by the censorship laws. And it leaves enough ground for the opposition, and it is a very legitimate way to do this debate, we see. And we see that even if those people who we are financially supporting do something bad, then we can, if we give the money and the money is used already for bad purposes before we can withdraw this money, then it's okay if some such outcomes come. But maybe we see what they said, that hackers have their own agenda and everything. We can withdraw our money at any point, and we can incentivize the hackers to use the money for bypassing the censor laws. So if we take money away, they cannot do anything anymore. And what also he's trying to say here, that we are somewhat helping those hackers to get to government. That is absolutely wrong. The only thing we are giving them money for is to help people get to the information, to get by the censorship laws. We don't see anyhow how these hackers will get to the government by that. But if they're good people and people in the internet go and like their ideas, then why not? Okay. What else he said was that China is actually a very nice place. We don't agree with that. We see that as far as the West can do anything, it should help China, because human rights are absolutely not guaranteed in China. And the fact that China has somewhat improved economically, it's just because the starting point was so low. And it doesn't mean that the people are better off, but that more under my point. And about also what he said about the retaliation for the regime, we don't see that the possible retaliation from China should be a reason for West for not doing what is ethical and what is right. But more about that also on the second point. Okay, now to the self-determination, which actually wasn't very much tackled from the first proposition. Or the only thing he said was that it is okay. Chinese people are okay if their economy is somewhat improving. But what Victor already explained to you, what we are standing for in this debate, is that people are brainwashed in many countries. The North Koreans, for example, they believe what Kim Jong-il tells them, that they are a superior race, and Southern Koreans are worse off because they are communicating and cooperating with the West. The people believe those lies because they have no access to information. And that's why we're on the proposition side. We totally stand for the people to get to the information. Because if they get to that, then they can make up their minds themselves. They can decide if what Chinese government is doing is really so good, then why does the government censor the internet? Because if people look at the internet and find out that Chinese government is really doing everything well, then it should be all okay. But what we actually see is that what is the Chinese government doing, and also Iran and Venezuela and North Korea and all the other very ugly and bad countries. What the dictators are able to do, they're able to brainwash the people, because if people don't have access to information, they are going to believe what is told to them. If their parents tell them, if the government tells them, then they believe it. Yes, please.
But how would you control this information flow? How you know that this information is actually not propaganda or biased information?
Because it's the internet. You can get everything from there. It's not like you go into the internet and then you have just one page. We believe that if people have access to the internet, then they will stumble upon anything there. They will find out from any newspaper. I think most people in China, for example, have heard about Google.com or something like that. So they go there and they Google whatever term they want, and they just stumble on articles that offer a different viewpoint from the brainwashing what their dictator gives them, and therefore they get different kinds of information, and then they will be able to form their opinion themselves, and it will be the only basis for them to ever become a democracy, because even Kim Jong-il doesn't have enough troops to keep all their people oppressed if people are not brainwashed anymore, and that is what our plan leads to. Okay, it leads to self-determination. That was the first point. Now to the second one, why we should do it. What Reynolds tried to argue here is that that we shouldn't, because we should be afraid of retaliation and not do everything. That is not what we believe in. We believe that in the West we have very clear standards that we can tell the whole world, very clear standards that no government, no dictator should be able to oppress its people, take away human rights, and take away access to information. And we believe that this is something that the West should do, because those people there are also human beings. Those are human beings whose human rights we are valuing, and most people in the Western societies are actually valuing those values and saying that this is important. And because they are humans just like us, we have to protect them. We have to give them the possibility to become what they want to become, because right now they cannot do it. But this is one reason. And the fact that China might be angry at the Western world is absurd in itself, because the Western world is promoting democracy anyway on every level, and we try to do it. And the fact that if the Chinese government gets somewhat angry doesn't mean anything, because if the people get to the internet, then they will topple the regime, because it isn't in international relations like China is going to be this governor forever and North Korea is going to be Kim Jong-il forever, because if the people get to the internet, they will be able to topple their dictators. That is already one thing why we shouldn't keep supporting the dictators. And we also see that if we keep supporting them, it is actually harmful to us as well, because we see that if you don't have very good countries that don't work very well, there is dictatorships, then you have, for example, immigration into other countries, which is a very big burden on South Korea, for example, the immigration from North Korea. And I believe so already for that purpose as well, Western countries don't do well if we keep supporting those regimes. And the West is altogether strong enough to stand against those regimes. And it is actually something that the people, what is the most important, we don't believe that there can be a view that the people want autocracy and want to be brainwashed because they cannot decide whether or not they want to be brainwashed, because they are brainwashed. And we also see that the West spreading the democracy is something that is becoming more and more credible. For example, the TV channel Al Jazeera, which is not the most Western-friendly channel usually, they even had articles lately on Libya just saying that those Westerners who say that Arab cannot have democracy are wrong, and West is wrong because they haven't sent enough troops into Libya. And that is something that I wanted to say, that the world is already accepting, the most people in the world are already accepting that democracy is a good thing and that West is spreading it. So what we have proved to win this debate already on the first proposition is that financing hackers leads to the self-determination of the peoples of the world, because they get to the information, they're not brainwashed anymore. And secondly, that the West should do it because we should help those people. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise, for your speech. And now I'd like to give the floor to the second speaker, first opposition, to close the first half of the debate. Vladimir, the floor is yours.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure to speak on the side of the first opposition. Okay, like the government is just living this like ideal world, with the rose ponies running around, like where the more information you have, the better you are, everything's so good, everything is so fine, this is great. Well, it doesn't work that way, and I'm going to explain it in my speech. But first, I have 3 points of rebuttal. Well, first I say, like brainwashing, they're brainwashed. It is very bad. We agree that brainwashing is bad. But we say that if we want to tackle brainwashing, if we want to really help these people, if we want to help solve this problem of brainwashing, we have to understand what we're doing. We don't have to engage in a deal with demons, with something we don't understand, with consequences we don't realize. Like, okay, the example of China. We would rather prefer a China that gets prosperous step by step, whereas these processes are like gradually evolving, gradually improving situation, rather than like supporting something that can break everything, can destroy, can cause a war or something like that. We think we should be accountable in our actions, and unless we understand exactly what we're doing, we should not do it. Then they say that internet doesn't lie. Well, that's not true. This is a lie. And even your beloved Google lies. For instance, when there was this Deep Horizon catastrophe in Caribbean Sea, the BP they did pay Google to delete these responses in internet, and Google accepted it. So there is no objective information in there. It is a lie. It is a very easy, and there are special mechanisms to control this information, and I'll talk about later on. And third, they say, oh, you support dictators. This is very bad. Well, we do not support dictators. We still advise them to improve human rights. We still give Nobel Prize to dissidents of China. We still do it. But we say that this exact mechanism is so not understood by our society. This exact mechanism can bring so many potential harms that we should by no means use it, because we do not understand the full extent of consequences. Okay, so my constructor. I will talk about hacker communities. I will explain why exactly they are not accountable and why it is bad. I will talk about principles by which we choose whether to finance revolutionaries or not. And third, I will cover the concept of cyber war. What is a cyber war? Why it is so important right now? And why the plan proposed by the government can lead to a cyber war, which is very bad and destroying for our society. Okay, so let's get started. So the hacker communities, who they are. Basically, this communities is already says that they're an organized group of people who are good at computers, as mentioned by Victor. But what's the problem? That first, it's very hard to understand their motives, because they don't have any single headquarter, they don't have manifesto, they're pretty widespread, and they may be sitting all over the world. And you never know whether you actually contact a hacker who is exactly in China, oppressed by this regime, or you contact some guy in the United States who just faked his IP, and you never know whether this is exactly the person. Now second, moreover, it's very hard to hold them accountable, as already explained by Reinhold very good. Again, for the same reason, they're widespread, and you never know what is the real cause of what they're doing. Take the most famous hacker in our world, like Julian Assange. All people say, oh, Julian Assange, he brings so many good news, freedom, but you never know what actually drives his motivation. Because he leaks this information piece by piece and at exact points of time. Sure. And this information does cause some troubles. It can cause revolutions, it can cause deaths, it can lead to violence. And we think that if we don't understand what we're dealing with, no thank you. We should not support these Julian Assanges. Now, second point in this, why they're hard to hold accountable, is because of the very basis of what they are, hackers. Because hackers means already they're sort of anarchists. They already dared to go against the system. They already dared to consented to consciously break law, to confront the system, to be like these unaccountable people. So we never know whether they will be accountable with us. How come they will treat that we are better and we are worth contacting and being relied on than their oppressive governments are? No, thank you. And third, important also, it's very hard to predict changes with them, because this organization, you can't really tell where are they going, what is their future plan or agenda. Because again, they always change the same. Maybe some guy changed, maybe some guy was killed, and another person is sitting under his IP account, and you never know whether this is this person. So we can never predict what they're doing, we can never predict their motivation. We think it's very bad, no thank you. So, second point, principle to exactly choose and support revolutionaries. So first, we believe that it is very important to have this idea that large masses do support this thing. That it is really supported by the nation of this oppressed country. It is really necessary for the country. Because so far, we have this little attempts in Google to uncover some Gmail accounts or something. But we don't really think that this is exactly what the nation strives for. This is the exact goals that they would like to see. Obviously, they would rather have some human rights stuff solved. And we never know whether these actions will actually solve it. Now second, again, as I told already many times, we have to know whether they will be responsible. And third, again, we should be control consequences. So I would like just to state it one more time very explicitly. We must be ready to take all responsibilities, both for what happens in this country and for what will happen in our country. And this brings me to my third point about the cyber war. What can happen with our country, and why by intervening by having deals with hackers, we can actually engage into a cyber war. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, those hacker communities already exist. If we are the ones to finance them, then they become dependable on us because they need our support.
like Julian Assange, no one knows who supports him, but he still has pretty much money. He can pay for getting out of the jail in London, and still we do not know who supports him, because he's everywhere and nowhere. Like, I don't see anyhow, they have never proven how these people can be accountable and how can people be dependent on us. Okay, very important, cyber war. So what is a cyber war? So just to give like an encyclopedia definition, it is a form of conflict that anticipates or even substitutes like an open conflict, an outbreak of violence, and this conflict aimed at digital systems of a country. So why is very important? Because of an increasing role of computer and digital system nowadays in all spheres of life, in civil infrastructure, in military infrastructure, both in democratic countries and in oppressive regimes. Like Americans already gave you a very good example of Iran nuclear station, that these guys have just been checking something and they realized that there is this virus that can actually make the station malfunction, make the station collapse. And we think this is very, very, very harmful, because like, again, so the first comes, again, there is this lack of accountability. You never know whether this finance that we provide to them is abused. Second, we know that these oppressive regimes, they are aware of this threat. For instance, Russia has already created a cyber defense department. They are aware that we can influence them, can somehow change them through these digital systems. So they may consider even mild support, they can view it as invasion. They can use it as an outbreak of violence, as real invasion. We think it's very bad, because it leads to this chaos. Like, no one is accountable for it. And they see it as invasion, so they can respond. They can maybe bomb our cities or something. Or they can also use cyber war to attack our digital systems. Because since they have so many hackers like against government, they most likely have many hackers on the side of the government. They can use it again to cripple our digital system, to engage into this cyber war. And nowadays it is so easy to actually make the infrastructure of a whole country dependent on one single digital code. So what have I told you today? I have told you that these hacker communities are totally non-accountable, and you can never predict what they are doing and what they will do. I have told you that this may lead to an outbreak of cyber war, which will be destructive both for the oppressive regimes and for democratic countries. For all these reasons, I'm proud to stay on the side of opposition. Thank you.